Hey everybody, Josh Lupresto, VP of Sales Engineering here from Telarus. As part of our Season 2 Race to the Summit Engineering Deep Dive. Today I'm here with my good friend Jared Stanley, Senior Solution Architect from DRT. Jared, welcome.
Hey Josh, thanks for having me. A pleasure to be here and talk to you about digital transformation. So thanks for having digital.
Excited to have you guys on, man. Let's talk a little bit about, let's get to know Jared. Anybody that hasn't worked with you, talk to me about your history in this space, right? What have you done historically and kind of leading that into your role now?
Yeah, so I started about 20 years ago with a company that I think everybody in technology is well aware of, UNet. So Clint and I are good friends. He gave me my first stint in sales at UNet, which transformed into a multitude of roles of various providers like Terramark, Savvis, and Cisco within sales management. Then I kind of dove into executive management. I was EVP of 2 managed service providers. That kind of dovetailed into my next gig, which was at Equinix, which is one of DRT's competitors and customers. I ran their global professional services team there, and that led me into a partner who brought me over as a global vice president of digital strategy, a consultant partner based out of New York. And then COVID hit, and unfortunately I was impacted by the layoffs, and called my good old friend Tony Bishop and Corey Dyer, who are executives at DRT, and lo and behold, here I am. So that's a little bit about me and my career and why I'm at Digital. Happy to be here.
Good stuff. That's good background. So let's go into DRT. So for anybody that's not familiar, that hasn't worked with you, I think maybe there's a preconceived notion of what you guys do, but take us through that, right? Take us through what, where you guys came from, maybe what you used to be for people that have worked with you in the past, and kind of what you're doing, what you're enabling, all the good stuff that you guys have for us now.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the people on the phone that are familiar with digital think of us as a wholesale play or a REIT, because that's our status, right? So the company was founded in 2004 when we acquired about 21 properties in North America, and that was our initial public offering. So we are publicly traded on the NASDAQ today. From 2004, we've acquired a multitude of companies. I think a lot of the partners and folks on the phone would recognize Telix. So in 2015, we acquired Telix's assets, which really helped us in carrier hotels and expand our data center footprint in North America. That led into a Telecity acquisition of 8 data centers, which in 2016 occurred. And then in 2017, we acquired DuPont Fabros, which further propelled the business. And then we started looking into EMEA and the LATAM markets. And in 2018, we acquired a company called Affinity, which really pronounced us in the Latin America markets and South America. And then most recently in 2020, we acquired a company called Interaction, which basically made us the largest multi-tenant flexible colo provider in the world, and made us #1 in EMEA overnight. So the company is growing mostly through acquisitions. We just recently announced, though, a significant play in the Ashburn market with Amazon. We took about 7.5 million square feet of space that we're going to build to the southwest portion of Dulles Airport, right next to Amazon's new deployment of about 3 million. So, the company is aggressively growing via acquisition, but also building rapidly. Data is not going anywhere, and it's causing a huge influx into data centers being built and how we're consuming resources within those buildings. So that's a little bit about Digital Realty and the company and kind of where we are today.
Good stuff. Let's talk about we're filming this dead smack in the middle of COVID. Let's talk about, from your perspective, biggest changes that you've seen in the data center industry, pre-COVID, and then post, right, kind of where we're at now.
First, I hope everybody's families and everybody out there are healthy and doing as well as they can in these troubling times. I think this caught us completely off guard. And Josh, I doubt Telarus or even Digital had ever developed a BCDR plan around a pandemic. So I think this has caught a lot of us off guard, especially in the technology space. But if you look at data centers, kind of how they got started, with Exodus back in the day, you really just built a building that housed compute, storage, had some network, and you powered up racks. That kind of transitioned as the technology from an infrastructure changed into blade chassis and converged infrastructure like the FlexPod and D-Blocks. virtualization hit. And people started talking about, as those converged infrastructures and virtualization hit, that would seriously impact data centers being built. Obviously, that didn't happen. Then you had kind of the cloud and hyperscales come in, and a bunk company called Amazon. I remember years ago, going, why are they getting into cloud? And here they're the most dominant player, worldwide in the cloud with AWS. They were also supposed to impact, data center providers like Digital. But the one thing I think that has been a commonality in the industry that has really propelled our industry and digital as a whole is data. Data hasn't changed. It's gone through the roof. Applications and workloads are needing to get to the edge because of network latency and throughput. And that whole ecosystem of data has really propelled, local, regional, and global providers to build out space aggressively. Some of our scale business is booming right now with the hyperscalers, as you and I talked about before we jumped on the call. And then our enterprise segment of our business is growing rapidly. And it's just because data and workloads and applications have, increased dramatically. And we continue to see that grow. So the data center industry isn't going anywhere. We just have to figure out two things: how we connect these data centers to our users, and how we transform them into what Digital has deemed in the marketplace centers of data exchange. So we don't deem ourselves as a data center anymore. We look at it as our consumers are coming to us and deploying infrastructure because they have to have a center of data exchange. They have to have a multitude of carriers, a multitude of on-ramps to the hyperscalers and SaaS providers. And that's what Digital's building to, that hub to edge and everything in between, and working with partners like Telarus to design that for our customers.
Good points. So what good would we be if we didn't use a buzzword today? So I'm going to use the one, digital transformation. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making, but coupled with, I want people to learn how you guys help with that, how partners can position you. When you're hearing people make these mistakes, what are you seeing? And then how do you help with that?
Well, I think the biggest disruptive change to all of us in technology is the business is now running technology. So before technology kind of told the business what to do. Now business outcomes are driving technology platforms. So I think that's the first change. I think digital transformation, you're spot on, is a buzzword, but it's no longer a want to, it's a have to. I mean, there's $13 trillion up for grabs. And if you're not digitally transforming right now, you're going to lose. I look at Uber, which is a fascinating company to me. They went in, looked at the transportation industry and said, we could do it better, faster, cheaper, and then service customers, in a more efficient way. And look at how they've taken over the transportation industry. And then look how they evolved, when COVID hit with Uber Eats. So having that agile infrastructure, being able to design it appropriately from a connectivity standpoint is a big miss. A lot of people are not concerned about the network, so to speak, and that's really the congestion point right now. So from a digital perspective, we look at two things that people miss in digital transformation. Data is not easy to move, number one. And then network you can only push so many packets through the network. So how do we start taking these MPLS cores and extracting them and getting to the edge, or developing some type of net new technologies with software-defined perimeter, zero trust networking, SD-WAN, that allows you to basically take your core assets and disseminate them out on the edge in a zone-based model, so your workloads and applications and security stacks are all closer to the proxy of your users. So I think from a high level, those are some things that people really need to think about. And I think one of the biggest misses that Telarus and we see with our customers is they come to us and say, I need a rack. Well, that's great. What's the rack doing? What are you trying to accomplish? And if you just need, a KVA to a rack and you just need to throw something in the data center, great. But what are you going to need tomorrow? What type of carriers are you going to need? Do you ever see yourself going into cloud? You may not today, but you may need to tomorrow. Why wouldn't you put those assets in a provider with a partner like Telarus that can service you on a multitude of things that you may not be required today, but may need tomorrow? So that's something that I see as a big miss in the industry right now, are people are just throwing racks in data centers and not really understanding how to interconnect them, not only with their own WANs, but their manufacturing suppliers, right? Or their, parent companies that, maybe overseas. That capability of being able to take that end-to-end ecosystem design is critical. So, what we always tell customers, at Digital is, let's take a deep breath, let's unpack what you're trying to accomplish today, and let's give you a future state look at why digital is so important to your business and why going with a provider that can service you on a local, regional, global perspective is important. And then lastly, I think the biggest pain to a lot of your partners on the phone is paperwork. Nobody really talks about paperwork. And that's one of the benefits that Telarus brings to Digital as a partner, is you guys are able to take a lot of these vendors, which I deem widget sales type minded vendors, which are, hey, I'm a carrier, I'm going to sell you network, or, hey, I'm only focused on security, or I'm a hyperscaler and all I care about is consumption. Well, we all know this digital transformation is going to hybrid cloud for a multitude of reasons. And however you design hybrid cloud, is up to your business and your consumer. But you need to understand that dynamic holistically and really build to that and leverage, as much as you can from, a contracting perspective, a stamp and repeat model. You could have the most agile infrastructure in the world, some of the best vendors, but if you can't get it through procurement and legal efficiently and quickly, you're going to miss. And we've seen a lot of complexity with, vendor sprawl in the industry. So, working with a partner like Telarus to funnel those vendors through Telarus and then champion it on a platform like Digital provides is key.
And, you brought up a good point, and we were talking with some partners about this earlier, in that, when a partner says, hey, I just need a rack, I need a data center, obviously we want to fulfill that. Yes, we want to help the customer out. But just by asking, I'm a huge questions has always been my thing. Just by asking those questions of, I'd love to help you with that. Talking about what you guys are doing with that rack, right? I need to get the power and the space and all that stuff figured out. But what are you doing? What kind of applications are you running across that? Are you connecting to any of the hyperscalers? Because I think you guys open up a door, right, as a big boy in the space to get them access to so much more. And if we'd be remiss if we didn't encourage them to ask that question. And I think you guys see the same thing all the time, right? You mentioned it.
Yeah, and I think, if you look, I think the three largest players in the industry, NTT, Equinix, and us. I think, where we separate ourselves from our competition is really, they build models intra to their data center, whether it's the packet acquisition that Equinix is building out, their interconnection. We have that same capability, but what we do is we enable our partners to tether out of our facilities and get to the edge. So, working with Telarus and, partners like Vapor.io and High Velocity to do container-based models that we've deployed in Chicago and Dallas, working with, NVIDIA and their GPU sets for robotic process automation and AI. We have these pre-validated designs, and, that's really what our ecosystem is. We want to give our partners and customers, a stamp repeat design within our data centers globally and our interconnection platform, and help them get to digital transformation faster. I mean, between Telarus and Digital, we see 5,000 customers. We're not any smarter than our customers. We just have a lot more visibility in various verticals and various mistakes and execution and positive things that people are doing in digital transformation that a lot of the customers don't see. I was on a call with a major construction company, and I asked, their CTO, I said, how many people within your 25-person staff has actually done a migration into a data center and enabled it into, multiple cloud providers with a multitude of carriers? And how many times have they done that? He pulled their crew in one, and I think one guy did it twice. Well, Telarus and Digital have seen, thousands over the last year, and enabling that in our facilities. So, we're just trying to help customers get the answers to the test better, faster, cheaper, and through our platform and our partnership with Telarus.
Those are great points. So let's dive into that a little further. Let's talk about an example. Maybe give me an example where you've seen DRT come in and really help expedite that digital transformation process, right? And maybe with that, what did the environment look like before? What was the problem? And then how did you help and how did you change that?
Well, I'm going to give you a prime example that we haven't executed on, but we're going to. And I'm working with the sales team right now in the Southeast on this, but I think this is a very good use case for your partners, especially Josh, with what we just talked about of get me a rack, right? So we were talking to another construction company, smaller in nature, based out of the Southeast, and they came to digital and they said, hey, I need a rack. And we went in and did the due diligence and asked questions like you said, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, we're just trying to get our call center app out, put it in a data center, get it out of our office because of COVID and put it, in a fortified facility like digital. That's all we need it for. Well, when we started doing our due diligence, we realized they did pretty significant amount of construction work, in the Southeast, but also their parent company was in France. And when we were talking to them about that, we started to realize that, wouldn't it be beneficial to them to connect to that parent company, connect their WANs through our virtual cross connect platform, which we could connect in all of our facilities from a metro, regional, and global perspective. And then we could also connect our customers from a virtual cross connect to many of the hyperscalers and SaaS providers. So, as we really unpacked the need for just a rack, we really told them, what I alluded to earlier is don't just think about putting your assets to get it out of your office. Put it in a facility that'll enable you to potentially do a multitude of things, whether that's multiple carriers, which we offer, right? Whether that's on-ramps to the hyperscalers or SaaS providers, which we offer. Whatever that is, even if it's pre-validated design, like Cisco's Secure Agile Exchange, we have a pre-validated design called a network hub for that. That's really important for customers to understand. You may not have the need today, but you'll want it tomorrow. And I think COVID is a prime example of that. Especially what you're seeing in the telehealth right now, the taxations on VPNs. People are really struggling with this now, but the people that are succeeding in this market are ones who designed it the appropriate way and thought about the end-to-end versus just that little widget. And so, that's one use case I would definitely, take to heart and think about. I think another one is a lot larger in scale. About a $30 billion agricultural firm came to us. They had a great plan from a business outcome perspective, and I'm sure a lot of your partners have heard of this. Get to the cloud as best as possible. It's the cheapest, better way. Get out of the data center industry, right? So the race was on. And I think we've seen that common from a lot of, business leaders, so to speak. We don't have to name any names that, just see the buzzwords at Gartner or what have you and say, we need to get to the cloud tomorrow. What we realized is they did a really good job for core applications that were cloud ready. And they designed the cloud, very well with a multitude of hyperscalers, pretty much all of them. And those applications were cloud ready, but there were a lot of applications that weren't. So doing that due diligence of understanding what can be onboarded immediately, what may need some work, coding or what have you, and pushed out, at a later time, and then what absolutely can't go to cloud. Having that application assessment and understanding, whether you're moving it from physical to virtual, virtual to virtual, virtual to physical. We're seeing a lot more of that because of egress charges out of the cloud when you pull data. That's really important, that application profiling. The second thing they saw was the network. And, I hate to use this term, but I'm going to use it anyway, Josh. I look at it as the network is like your toilet bowl. Nobody really thinks about it or cares about it until it backs up. And, if you think of the MPLS design and architecture today, usually you have an A or an A and B if you're doing redundancy. You can't build a solution with what's being demanded by these cell phones and your users and the expectations from the millennials of instant on, instant now gratification, and tunnel that back to a single site. It just will have a lot of hairpinning and tromboning issues, and it just has security issues as a whole as well. So, helping them design through digital's backplane of connectivity to on-ramps to all the hyperscalers and SaaS providers that they would need today and in the future, and then using our carrier neutrality that we have in all of our global facilities to allow them to keep their core network provider, but also use a second network provider that was substantially less in cost. helped them basically increase their bandwidth 5x, had a 10 gig enabled backplane, both from a physical and virtual cross-connect perspective, and actually saved them about 40% in operating costs in less than a year. So, really sitting down and designing, this end-to-end strategy or your start strategy and what you possibly could be needing down the road is really critical for business, who are looking to digitally transform.
Good points. So I'm gonna, I know we got a couple more points, but I'm gonna wrap up just on products that we've talked about. I wanna make sure partners walk away with this. Obviously, co-location is a no-brainer, right? You guys do that in your sleep, that's easy. And now with all the acquisitions that you mentioned and the interaction data center piece that partners will soon have access to, how many data centers is that across the world now altogether? 100?
We're up to about 300 data centers globally. So we're in about 20 countries. We have about 150,000 cross connects. So, very vast, dominant player in the colo space. The one thing I will tell you that's a little unique to digital versus a lot of the colo plays that are out there are two things. One, we provide a very flexible colocation offering. So whether you need a half rack or 4 megawatts, we build to suit in those dynamics, both from a scale and colocation perspective. So racks, cages, 3 megawatts, everything in between, even larger. So, we have a very flexible colocation offering. It's localized, it's regionalized, it's obviously global. So again, if you need Charlotte colocation and that's all your client needs, great. Just think if they need Frankfurt down the road. Wouldn't it be nice for your partners to just call Telarus and say, hey, stamp, repeat, contract's already done. So think about that dynamic. I think another dynamic is this data gravity problem that a lot of people are starting to see in the marketplace. We're going to have a huge announcement at the end of this month, Tony Bishop and team, about a data gravity index. Data is incredibly hard to move. And digital is building platform digital around that concept. And what we've broken it down to is a network hub, control hub, data hub, and service exchange. Our service exchange is our interconnection platform that connects to all the hyperscalers, drives a marketplace with, A to B users, whether it's your manufacturing supply chain and you want to extend out those virtual cross connects and connect your WANs, we can do that. Control hubs are more geared to your ITSM layer. The data hubs, obviously, robotic process automation, AI, those are pre-built for that. And we work with NVIDIA and their GPU sets pretty well. As we kind of progress that platform, what we're really resolving for is almost creating a zone-based model. And if you think about the CDN and caching providers back in the day, the Limelight Akamai's and those encoding servers, it's a really interesting concept in the early 2000s when they started getting going. That's really what we're building at Digital, is we're building an ecosystem for that caching mechanism. So you're going to have redundancies built in, because if zone A goes down, you'll have B, C, D, E, F, G. And, really we're seeing a lot of traction from our customers wanting to leverage our data centers in core regions, but still connect them holistically globally. And then, I think the next step you'll see in our data gravity and where we're propelling to is really trying to figure out 5G and the edge and building that last leg at the edge, whether it's containers, whether it's partnerships with AWS and Outpost. All of those things will be outlined and will be soon announced in the coming months. But that's really where we want to be, is designing that end-to-end ecosystem. And then finally, with our Megaport relationship that we have, this is really important for your partners to understand. If you have customers in Flexential, QTS, or some of our competitors even in North America or globally, we're creating, through our Megaport investment that we recently sold, we have the Megaport built within our service exchange. We're going to create an API-driven ecosystem that allows our customers to connect to anywhere a Megaport POP sits in any of our competitors, and then bridge all of those acquisitions that I noted previous to the call together, and our data centers holistically, which you saw were 300. We're going to have capabilities to extend out this service exchange platform to over 1,600 data centers, hopefully by this time next year. So again, whether it's in our facility or somebody else's, connecting that holistically through an API-driven ecosystem and creating those SKU-based models where customers can come in and predefine and predetermine what they need from a network control, data, and service exchange hub is where digital is going to play. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from Gardner and some of the other folks about, where we're heading as a business, and it's an exciting time to be here.
Good stuff. Let me maybe call on two final thoughts here. If you had to leave the audience with kind of one key to success, right now that we've understood and we've laid out all the things that you have from a capabilities perspective, what would be that one key to success?
Really believe in your people and understand. I think culturally, and this is actually an interesting topic with what's going on, I think you really need to culturally understand both your internal workers and external workers, meaning externally, like who are your consumers, internally, meaning who are you hiring, what are their expectations. I constantly have sat on panels and we've talked about, the millennials, the tweeners like myself, and, the soon to be retirees. And you got to build and design your product portfolio and how you're attacking your market to that demographic. It's very wide, but you have to make your IT infrastructure agile enough to hit all of those aspects. I think you could see, Josh, that the banks have really struggled with this, but have really propelled to being more automated and app driven, with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. So really culturally understanding who your internal workers will be, current state and future state, and where your consumers and how they're consuming your product and who is that target market is key. A lot of business outcomes are driven around that, and those are going to impact how you build your infrastructure. And I think app-driven infrastructure is the key moving forward. Good. Design it around your apps.
Good.
And your users.
Final thought then. We always like to wrap, and I think you alluded to some of this, so maybe just a recap of what's to come in the future. And I realize this is hard because you guys are publicly traded, but for partners that are getting these deals in the funnel now, as they look for the next 3, 6, 9 months even, some of these DT deals take time. What do you want them to be thinking about, right? What can they expect to see from an integrations or different things coming out of DRT in the near future?
Yeah, if you need colo, I think you hit the nail on the head. We have that, and it's very flexible, very unique offering that's local, regional, and global. So again, 6 to 9 months out, if I'm one of your partners, I'm talking to a customer right now, we're very competitive from a pricing standpoint on a rack, on a cage, on any type of scale business. Building it with a provider that can scale it from a local, regional, and global perspective. Again, it simplifies the contracting, simplifies how your partners and Telarus get paid, and then enables us to build the ecosystem platform. And if you really think of our ecosystem platform and what it's going to be, it's going to be critical data centers, which we have 300 today and are rapidly expanding, enabling to the edge for our users and designing that hybrid cloud ecosystem for our customers. That's really what digital is going to do, and resolving the data gravity issues. Again, I can't tell you, data's not going anywhere. I think, Josh, we alluded to it earlier, the cloud and hyperscalers are supposed to be the end of digital and the Equinixes of the world. And it just didn't happen because the data is just growing immensely. And so more facilities are being built every day. We're rapidly acquiring and expanding, as we mentioned earlier. And I just think you want to be with a player who's going to be in it in the long run as well. I think you're going to see some, we had talked about Delta and the airline industries earlier, Josh. I think you're going to see some significant rationalization and consolidation in some of these regional players, whether they get acquired or whether they get cycled out. Who knows? So, I would be betting with folks like Digital moving forward for any type of co-location, edge computing, and everything in between. We're here to help. We love partners like Telarus, and we love working with your customers.
Awesome. Okay. I'm out of questions. I think that brings us to the end. Jared, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh. Wish I could be out there, in, like, say, 4 months to go skiing at Deer Valley. So maybe we can get that done if COVID goes away. But thanks for having us at Digital, and thanks for the partnership. Appreciate it.
One of these days. Look forward to it. Okay, everybody, wrapping up another series, Season 2, Race to the Summit, Engineering Deep Dive, today with Jared Stanley, Senior Solutions Architect. Thanks so much. Till next time.